Okay, Nicole, let's look at a couple things that can be done to really help boost this. Because you have really strong theming, especially in your letter choices. But we can work on your shapes and your flow. So, first thing I might talk about, let's talk about arrangement of your letters and just a few tweaks that you can do. Um, right now, this right here, let's look at this section. If you're gonna have dark letters on a light background, then you should actually make your drop shadow light colored. So you can change when you add a drop shadow to it, you can change the color of the shadow and also change it from multiply to something like lighten, and that will allow you to have a light shadow. And then what I would also encourage you to do is to mirror the shape that you have here with the shape of your letters, meaning that you see how this is long and then it gets narrower and narrower and narrower. I would suggest a long top line and then kind of narrower and narrower and narrower. So it would probably be something like letters of the and maybe even alphabet. And then it might be letters of the and then alphabet by frequency. Might be the way that it goes to sort of create a triangle. So letters of the alphabet by and then frequency would be a better flow for this. The other thing is right now, let's work on the hierarchy and the emphasis between these because right now you have a bunch of boxes that almost all have equal emphasis to one another. There's not one thing that really stands apart. And probably the easiest thing to stand apart would be to make this E maybe a touch larger and more emphasized. What I would suggest doing is making this, yeah, maybe a bit bigger, maybe even putting like an oval shape around it to create a frame around it, and actually moving this down and making this take up this whole section while this moves over to here and this section gets made smaller and a little bit less narrow. Like this feels squished in from side to side. I would work on making that a little bit wider. You can actually increase the spacing in between your letters in your text by, let's just go ahead and open up some kind of an example. Open up once. Oh, gonna be my files. That's why I'm not seeing anything for me. So let's open up this right here and I'll show you how to change the spacing. So if I write some text out right here, let's make it right there. You can actually change the spacing of the text right here. And that can help it to not feel quite so tight. And I would make it smaller. And then what that will do is that will, let me put it back in, that will reduce the emphasis on these two elements and increase the emphasis on this element and make this feel more unified. The alternate thing you could do is if you made this a little bit larger and this again a little bit smaller, is you could take this and drag it and make it the whole length right here, or maybe like 3/4 of the length where it was, maybe about this size right here. And then the foot of the E extended down a little bit more if it's a little bit larger, and then making this just a tiny bit smaller right there. And that will help just with making this feel really much more emphasized. The other things that can be done is right now you're having a very strong theme that's leaning into either Art Nouveau with your fonts or possibly the psychedelic period, although your colors are giving me more of an Art Nouveau decade. So in choosing that, I would include a few more shapes either in your background or frames, or replace some of these simpler rectangles, which are not clashing because you have chosen rounded rectangles, but they're also not helping me to be as specific as you could be. So by going into some of your stock places and looking for some Art Nouveau specifically elements and motifs in this one and here, I specifically chose to look at only free ones. These you can recolor, you can customize and reshape because it's Illustrator, but you might find that some of these elements could be very helpful to you. And again, if you download them, if they are directly editable, so let's say this one right here, we'll just pull it. If they are directly editable, then you can edit them directly in Illustrator. Otherwise, if they give you an image, you can image trace it and then utilize it. Let's see what they give us right here. So when we open that up, okay, they give you a JPEG, which just means that you can select the whole thing, copy it, paste it into your document like so. And then you can go and trace it. In this case, I'll just do default. And then once you expand it and then group it, then you can, make that actually in your scheme colors. So consider some elements that are going to more strongly pull in your style and your theme. If you don't want to go into Art Nouveau and you're more going for a groovy psychedelic era feeling, then you could search specifically for keywords associated with psychedelia, or groovy could also be possible. Although you will probably get more with Art Nouveau, seeing as how more of that's going to be in the public domain. So if you include some of that stuff into there, then you can resubmit this after you get your feedback.